Hey team, this is Kareem. I am your primary self for CMAS, and in these next 10 minutes, exactly 10 minutes, I'm going to give you a brief overview of just the way we're going to accommodate student needs for CMAS. This is a presentation that's required by the state, and we're fortunate that Ellen had the idea of doing this over a video so you could do it on your own time. And then we'll just need you to sign a paper acknowledging that you got all this information at the end. So I'm trying to make this as quick, as painless as possible, also throwing a couple riddle questions right in the middle here. So stick with me. Thank you for all being experts here at these accommodations. Your support will be super appreciated come test time. So we'll be talking a little bit about the different types of accommodations today, how they're going to be administered during CMAS. What are accommodations? Starting really, really broadly, accommodations are truly best understood as being all about equity. So these are practices that allow for equitable access during instruction and assessment for students with needs. These are not meant to give students an unfair handicap and allow every student to do better. These are truly meant for equity. So how do we go about providing accommodations? These have to be done on an individual basis, and they have to be just written out in a formal plan. So Ellen Barber has been super helpful. Big shout out to Ellen for just helping me gather all the information needed to assign these accommodations for students. After we give these accommodations, we're required by law to evaluate them regularly to see just how effective they are. Again, these should be used in both instruction and assessment, not just assessment. The most specific accommodations we have are called UARs, Unique Accommodation Requests. So these are for only students who have documented IEPs or 504 plans. Going from the top a little more broadly, we have regular accommodations that can also be applicable for our EL students. Again, going even more broadly down this pyramid, then next we have accessibility features and administrative considerations. So these don't necessarily need to have a plan in order to get these accessibility features. And then broader, we have techniques such as stretch breaks that you can give all students during the test. So who can receive these? Administrative considerations can be for everyone, individual or group. Accessibility features are also available to everyone, but should be assigned individually, and they have to be given to the state to just so the state knows who's getting what for accessibility features in advance to Pearson. Again, as discussed earlier, for accommodations, students must have an IEP or 504 or an EL plan, and they must use this accommodation during instruction on a regular basis. So we're not just giving students an accommodation for the first time during this test. It should be regularly given. Again, we got EL accommodations as well, and some accommodations that are available to any student. One thing in my time teaching that was just extremely helpful is developing just a quick hand symbol for during testing, if it's that a student could show, like a little peace sign if they just need to, stand up and right behind their desk without disrupting other students, just take a stretch. That's something that you can provide to all students, as are the rest of these bullet points right here. These don't need to be captured in Pearson Access Next or in any accommodations tool. Again, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to read through all of these, but feel free. These are actually embedded accessibility features and tools that will be available on computers for students if they need to use a calculator. These are all the things that will be available on the computers. There's also some accessibility features such as assistive technology, text-to-speech, color contrast. Some students will have a paper test. These have to be, in Ellen Barber and I, just for about the 80 students who are on IEPs or 504 plans in our middle school. We actually just entered all of these for our students, just based on undocumented needs. These accessibility features are available to any students, but they might not be appropriate for all. Again, similar access strategies during instruction. That's kind of the theme, is that this shouldn't be just totally different than what is already happening. So we're going to now kind of dive into the few different types of accommodations. So accommodations that help with presentation of the test, how students respond to answers on the test, and how the test is timed, as well as accommodations for ELs. So students who have there's students who have needs for presentation accommodations. These can include text to speech, or maybe a student needs paper-based test. Again, they adjust how the test is presented. Feel free to read through those. Response accommodations are, again, adjusting how students respond to the test. So can they just verbally speak an answer and actually have that typed on the computer? Again, that depends on the student, but if students are needing that, we will provide that based on their plans. And finally, we have a lot of students who benefit from extended time under the timing and scheduling bucket, and students who are just very active and require breaks where they can actually stop the clock. So that's a different type of accommodation as well. Couple random questions here. Feel free to pause and read them. I would love to hear your answer. I especially thought number one's pretty, for me, if you know me at all, you probably know one of the teams here. And for number two, just a great riddle there. So think about that one. Paper pencil testing options. Moving on here. DPS policy states that all students are taking this test on the computer unless otherwise documented. We do have a couple students who will take a paper test. Feel free to read the stipulations below, or just reach out if you have any questions about who our students are that are taking the paper test. I will have communicated with you beforehand though, but feel free to reach out. Shout out to Amy Green, who's been doing an amazing job just helping do accommodations for our English language learners. All of you are doing a very good job of this in your classes as well. And also we want to provide accommodations as needed for students who are our ELs. Depending on how long students have been in the country or in the EL program, there are different rules that apply to them. If they've been enrolled for 5 years or less in Colorado, they can take CMS tests in Spanish or in their native language. If they've been enrolled for more than 5 years, they can take it in English, but have access to other EL accommodations. Again, if they've tested out of the EL program or been redesignated, then they actually do not have access to the accommodations because they've demonstrated that no longer meets their needs, which is really great in a lot of ways too. Accommodations for ELs on the ELA test. So feel free to read through this quickly to note what ELs get on the ELA test. I'm not going to read it word for word. And same with science and social studies here. Non-English responses. So again, if students are responding and if students do meet these needs, and they can actually respond in Spanish, and it will be scored by Spanish speaking score. And if we have a student tested in a language other than English or Spanish, they can be locally translated by someone in our school and transcribed for scoring. If a student is brand new to the U.S., they actually are exempt from the ELA test. However, they will still have to take science or social studies. Actually, at our school this year, social studies is not happening in the middle school. We're not one of the schools selected, and science is only 8th grade. Great. Thinking back to the top of the pyramid here, students with the most specific, unique accommodation requests. A couple words on them. We're almost at the end here. So, again, these accommodations are very specific and have to be approved ahead of time. Again, Ellen and I are for the middle school are working on these. I'll work with the rest of the SPED team as well. These can happen on the ELA test. Again, if they need text to speech, or in math, if they need a calculator, we will file for a UAR for them. Just a couple resources here before we wrap up. Some instructional resources. Again, no need to look at social studies this year for CMAS. But science for 8th grade, definitely check out those resources. That will give some great test prep tools. And for actually, if you want to get a student used to working here with accommodations, there's a lot of resources available on the Pearson Next website. Thanks so much, guys, for listening. Feel free to email me with any questions. Make sure to sign in during next PD when you'll be asked to sign in, and just note that you've seen this presentation and are now an expert on accommodations. Thanks so much, team.